While the world was glued to Operation Epic Fury, watching missiles light up the sky over Tehran, one country wasn't just watching the explosions, they were taking notes. That country was China. Every radar signature, every jamming frequency, every decision delay between the White House and the battlefield, all of it recorded, analyzed, and fed into something much bigger. Because while America was dismantling Iran's military in just 38 days, China was running the largest real-time intelligence operation of the 21st century. They didn't need to fire a single shot, they just needed to watch. And what they learned wasn't about Iran, it was about America. Specifically, how to beat it. And the place they intend to apply those lessons? It sits 100 miles off their coast. To understand what China pulled from this conflict, we have to start with what they were tracking from day one. China didn't just watch the Iran war from news feeds, they treated it like a live laboratory. Real weapons, real tactics, real American decision-making on full display. China tested whether its BeiDou satellite system could survive the same electronic jamming the US used against Iran. They mapped every communication frequency the US military operated on. Not to interfere, not yet, just to understand. But the real gold was in the data. China used AI to process battlefield information in real time. Drone movements, missile trajectories, response times, all converted into training data for military AI that simulates future wars. And the most unsettling part? They weren't just watching what America did. They were studying how America thinks. How fast does a commander escalate? Where are the supply lines? Which bases are vulnerable? Every answer feeds directly into one scenario: Taiwan. But China wasn't just taking notes from a distance. They were a lot closer to this war than most people realized.
I had heard that China is giving weapons to, you're seeing it all over the place, to Iran. Yeah, and I wrote him a letter asking him not to do that. And he wrote me a letter saying that essentially he's not doing that.
While China publicly stayed neutral, behind the scenes, the picture looked very different. Chinese-made systems were already embedded in Iran's military. Drone components, sensor tech, electronic warfare systems. Remember when Iranian forces struck US radar infrastructure early in the conflict?
That Iran used a Chinese spy satellite to target US bases in the Middle East last month.
That precision raised eyebrows, because Iran's own capabilities didn't fully explain the accuracy, and there's only one candidate who could feed Iran with real-time coordinates. Think of it like coaching a boxer from outside the ring. You're not throwing punches, but you're telling him where to swing. And every punch that landed gave China real-time feedback on whether their systems actually worked against American defenses. This wasn't charity, this was a product test. But what China learned from the outcome, that's where things get really strategic. Why did the war end after just 38 days? It wasn't because Iran surrendered. America could have kept going for months. So what stopped it? Money. When the Strait of Hormuz shut down, roughly 20% of the world's oil flow just stopped.
More than 500 million barrels of crude oil have been taken off the markets. Now a shortage in supply has led to higher fuel prices everywhere.
The ceasefire didn't come from the Pentagon. It came from a global economy screaming for stability. China was paying very close attention to that pain threshold because Taiwan's TSMC produces over 35% of the world's semiconductors. The chips in your phone, your car, AI systems, even military equipment. 5 weeks of oil disruption forced a ceasefire? Imagine what a chip shortage does. Cars stop getting built, AI development stalls, defense systems can't get critical components. China saw how fast economic pressure ends a war, and they're sitting right next to the single most important pressure point on the planet. That's not a coincidence, that's a strategy. But economics wasn't the only lesson. The battlefield revealed something just as powerful. Iran sent waves of cheap drones at American positions. Every time one was shot down, it cost the US a fortune. A Patriot interceptor, $3 to $4 million. One Iranian drone, about 20,000. 150 drones in a wave means potentially $500 million in interceptors to stop a few million in drones. That's not a battle, that's a math problem. And the math doesn't work in America's favor. Iran's drone capability is limited. China's is not. A country that flies thousands of drones in perfect formation just for entertainment. Imagine that weaponized. Tens of thousands, mixed with missiles, electronic warfare, and AI targeting. The Iran war proved that overwhelming numbers break traditional defense systems, and no country can scale that faster than China. But China noticed something else, something that has nothing to do with weapons. America's military power is arguably the strongest in human history, but military strength means nothing if the political will to use it runs out. Vietnam 10 years before public pressure forced withdrawal. Afghanistan 20 years, ending with a messy exit nobody was proud of. The Iran conflict 5 weeks. That's not a military limit, that's a political limit. A conflict over Taiwan could drag on for months. If American support cracks after 5 weeks over oil prices, what happens after 3 months of a chip shortage? China doesn't need to beat America on the battlefield. They just need to outlast America's willingness to fight. And that calculation, that patience, is baked into everything China does. But there's one more layer. China didn't just learn from what America did right, they learned even more from what Iran did wrong. Iran relied on large surface ships, over 40 wiped out in days. China took note. Big ships in contested waters are targets, not assets. Iran was boxed into its own coastline. China knows a Taiwan scenario needs reach far beyond its shores. Iran lost air superiority almost instantly. China has spent decades and billions making sure that won't happen to them. And the biggest mistake? Iran had drones and missiles, but never used them in coordinated mass strikes. Not smart waves, not synchronized multi-vector attacks. Every Iranian failure has triggered a doctrinal adjustment inside the PLA. When you zoom out, something becomes very clear. The Iran war was a live demonstration of American capability, American speed, but also American limits. And China had front row seats. They mapped the technology, they tested their own systems, they measured how fast America acts, how much pain it can tolerate, and how quickly political will evaporates. None of this means a conflict over Taiwan is inevitable, but if it ever happens, it won't look anything like what we saw in Iran. Because China isn't planning to fight like Iran. They're planning to fight like the country that watched Iran lose and figured out exactly why. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And right now, it's rhyming very loudly, in Mandarin. The question is whether anyone in Washington is listening. If that doesn't concern you, you haven't been paying attention. And if it does, you already know what comes next. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Not copies, adaptations.